Welcome back into the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey. He's Jacob, and we're a Minnesota Sports podcast. If you're a Minnesota sports fan, please click the like button on this video and also feel free to subscribe to our channel. And today we're going to be talking Minnesota Vikings as they got routed on Monday Night Football by the Eagles, 24-7. All points were scored in the first half. There was zero scoring in the second half by either team. The Eagles kind of gave the Vikings plenty of opportunities to get back into this game, and the offense could just never really get going. They started off the game with a couple 3-and-outs, but then they end up, having a nice long drive to go down and score a touchdown to cut the deficit to 14-7. And it seemed like maybe the offense was going to get back on track. And then from there on out, the offense was once again a disaster. So what were some of your main takeaways from last night's game, Alberta?
Yeah, I feel like a little bit of everything went wrong on both sides of the ball. Like you said, our defense gave up 24 points in that first half, which was very detrimental to us trying to win that game. And then they came out in the second half. They pitched a shutout, but our offense did nothing with it, so that was disappointing. So I felt like the defense certainly could have came in with a better game plan and also adjusted within the game, like once it just wasn't working, but that just didn't happen. And then I'd also cut them just a little bit of slack, though, because especially in that first half, as you alluded to, our offense went 3-0 on every drive besides that touchdown drive. So, they're putting the defense on the field way too much, and that's just been kind of a common theme these past couple of years. So, that just can't happen, especially when, I don't know, our defense isn't going to be great this year, but they can be okay, but they got to be put in advantageous situations. So, and certainly last night was far from it. So then you get the second half, like you said, we had plenty of chances to at least get back in the game, make it competitive, maybe not necessarily win, but make it look more respectable because, we had the blocked field goal that Chris Boyd, I kind of laughed at that he didn't host that just because he got ran down by the punter. Yep. And then Hicks late in the game, he also had a pick and got it right inside the 10-yard line, but again, we just didn't score. And then at that point too, he also on the offensive side of the ball, he had Irv just dropping the ball just like Watson did last week for the Packers. That would have been a sure touchdown. And then that first interception Kirk threw, that's Jefferson's fault because he cut up the field instead of across it in front of Slay. So that was on him. But then really comes down to after that, it's just it's the same thing happening over and over again where everything else goes wrong and Kirk doesn't lift us up. He just adds to it. It just got worse. He throws the first pick. It's all in his head, and he just forgot how to play football after that. And he threw multiple interceptions that were all his fault after that, especially that ball, the Thielen on the sideline to try and pick up that first down when Jefferson's literally in his line of sight right there, which could have also been a first down if he just throws it to him. He's wide open, but he doesn't. So it's at that point it was over and there was no coming back. And yeah, I mean, as I just got done rattling off all these different things happen from a lot of different people, but really it goes back to the leadership of your team coming out and looking as unprepared as we did for this game. And then so that's on the coaching staff to come in with a better game plan. And then also the leaders on your team, and that usually starts with the quarterback, and wasn't a whole lot of leadership to be found there. So I'd say that's probably my biggest takeaway. It was just it just was a big mess, and that just comes to being unprepared and not really getting off to a good start to begin the game in that first half.
So I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying I still think the Vikings are a good team. I think they can win 10 games, maybe 11,
I agree.
Compete for the division. This is one of their toughest games on the schedule. Don't get me wrong. But I think we got exposed a little bit last night. I think our defense has shown some age. Harrison Smith didn't play a great game. Patrick Peterson was getting cooked for a while there, excuse me, in the first half. There's still some young guys that are trying to figure stuff out on defense. Cam Bynum got burned a couple different times. He didn't look very good. So the defense is definitely going to be a work in progress. We still can't stop the run. We bring in Harrison Phillips. We have Dalvin Tomlinson from last year. I mean, those guys still can't stop the run. And I get it's hard to contain Jalen Hurts, and it's hard with the read option because you don't really know what's coming. But, I mean, you're going to face so many quarterbacks in the league that can do that. There are so many quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts in the NFL right now, especially some of the top quarterbacks in the league that are running these RPOs. And, I mean, they got to be able to figure out how to stop that at some point. Zimmer always struggled with these mobile quarterbacks as well. Maybe it's more the personnel rather than the coach. I don't know. Because I was getting frustrated last night. Why is Ed Donatel given so much cushion? Why are we not playing more man? Why are we playing so much zone? Well, maybe the fact of the matter is when you have guys like Patrick Peterson out there, Dancer I thought had a pretty good game, but he's still a little undisciplined. Can you really trust Shannon Sullivan? Is man coverage really an option, I guess, for this team is kind of my thought. And so they were basically creating a shell, as Troy Aikman was explaining on the broadcast, to keep everything in front of them. And hopefully Jalen Hurts makes a bad throw, a ball gets tipped, which eventually it did, that Jordan Hicks pick, but it was too little too late. As for the offense, I mean, how many more years do we need to see it? I mean, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He might be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He's right on the fringe. But you're never going to win a Super Bowl with this guy. I don't know. I don't know how many more times I got to say it. I think this is a good team. I think we can win the division. Can we win a Super Bowl? Can we make a run? Absolutely not. Are we going to go on the road and beat Philly or beat Tampa Bay in the playoffs? Not a chance with that guy at quarterback. The second something goes wrong, the first pick, which wasn't even his fault, it was Jefferson's fault, he completely shrinks from the rest of the game there on out. They'd send a blitz up the middle. He'd have no idea where to go with the ball. He'd just throw a jump ball and it'd be, near interception or interception every single time. And it's like when the game is still within grasp, especially in the third quarter there where the Eagles just kept giving us chance after chance, you got to just step up and do something, especially like that Jordan Hicks pick got us inside the 10-yard line. The Chris Boyd blocked field goal that he should have returned for a touchdown got us down to like their 30-yard line or something. You got to score points there. So it's really frustrating because Kirk Cousins is 34 years old. He's a veteran in this league. He's very well compensated, and he's still coming up massively short in these situations. And of course, it's prime time. A classic Kirk Cousins Minnesota Vikings primetime game, peeing down their leg on Monday Night Football, especially in Philly, which has been a house of horrors for us in the past. It was kind of the perfect recipe. But my main takeaway, I guess, really is I still think this team can be really good. I could see Kirk having a great bounce back game against Detroit because it's at noon on Fox on Sunday at home. It's all the ingredients for a good Kirk Cousins bounce back game. But is he really going to be able to take us to the promised land at this point? I don't see it.
Yeah, I know. Kevin O'Connell's got his work cut out for him, certainly, and hopefully he's got some idea up his sleeve as to how to really reflect and move past that game last night in a positive way, so it doesn't happen again, or at least in the capacity that it did. Because obviously we saw the worst version of Kirk you can possibly draw up. So
yeah,
I would hope we don't have to come back to this again later in the year, and hopefully we don't see something as bad as it was last night. Because I think in the long run, I don't think a loss on the road in Philly is going to kill you, and you'll look back and be like, oh man, we should have had that game or something. Like that's probably not going to be the case this year. I do believe that Philly's one of the top, I'd probably say 4 teams in this NFC, along up there with Green Bay and LA Rams and the Bucks. Like I think they're in that group now because that's what it boils down to, because they have such a strong roster, and that's because they have Jalen Hurts, who's on like this economical contract where you can just totally, as Eric Heeker put it on Twitter, just make the rest of the roster a bus, or it's like just this unstoppable force, and the quarterback just needs to play within it. Where it's like Kirk, I theoretically could see the same thing happening if he was playing on a price tag like Hurts, where it's like a mid-round pick, like he was back in the day, the 4th-round pick. Yeah. Like I could see that working because you could totally bolster the rest of your roster to be stupid good. But obviously that's unrealistic because this guy has the 3rd highest cap hit in the league, and he's never gonna go down from that until he literally is unplayable. So it's this trap that you're in where it's like you have to get more out of him in these situations, and you're just not getting it right now. And the time will tell the rest of the season, these last 15 games, if O'Connell will be able to look back on this game and work with Kirk to be like, yeah, we know what went wrong. This is how we're going to fix it. And like going to another primetime game, like for instance, when we get thrown another hostile road situation, like probably Buffalo, when that game comes along, I'd probably say that'll be another one that's kind of similar environment to this. Yep. So how you respond in that game, I think, will be huge to see if progress has been made, especially considering that's still a couple months away. I know Buffalo's a good team, but you at least want to see your offense still competitive. Like it's a pretty good defense, and like you said, he hit it right on the nose too. It's like Kirk's in his element. He's a creature of habit when he's playing a noon game, and I believe that's a noon game. So like that in itself should correct some things. When realistically, that's stupid that it works like that, but it does. But it's just, I feel like we're just having the same conversations that we had for years. But now I walk away from it a little less disheartened because, as we talked about last night, I'm not unhappy with both the coach and the quarterback, like the 2 main components of a football team. Now it's just like I'm honed in on the quarterback to being like, okay, I still don't like what I'm seeing here, but we have a new head coach here that you feel good about, and hopefully we'll be able to get as much as possible out of him come the end of the season. But you just don't know for sure. And hopefully, if this season's a bust or it just ends like all the other ones where it's like we missed the playoffs or like a 7, 8, 9 win team, whatever it is, then we can go into next offseason. I love that we're talking about the offseason before the season even ends, but it's like you
Yeah.
can go into next year being like, yeah, we have to identify a quarterback that we're going to select high in the draft in this 2023 draft. So, yeah, lots to unpack here, but yeah, plenty of season left. And like you said, I still think they're going to be a good team. If they stay relatively healthy, they're probably still a 10, 11 win team, hopefully. And that's a playoff team, like you said. It's hard to picture Kirk winning in some hostile environment like Philly on the road in the playoffs when it counts and when it matters most, when he has to play his best. You just have a hard time seeing that because, like, the only way you avoid going on the road is if you are the top seed in the NFC, and like that's pretty unrealistic considering like last time it probably was a game you had to have if you envisioned that at all. So you're probably gonna have to win at least one game in some tough environment, and it's just hard to picture right now.
Yeah, I agree completely, and it's fascinating because, of course, they had the Monday night doubleheader last night. The other game was Bills Titans. Titans are a very similar team to the Vikings, in my opinion, other than the fact that they do have a quarterback that they just drafted that could be a potential replacement for Tannehill. But Tannehill and Kirk are very similar. Two teams that have been heavy on the run game in the last several years. Titans, although they did lose their best wide receiver, they traded him to Philly, so they don't have quite the pass, receiving options that we do, and a pretty decent defense, but nothing amazing. Um, Two very similar teams both just get routed on Monday Night Football by opposing teams that have an extremely athletic quarterback with a great arm. Um, you know, Smart coaching, really. I mean, just aggressive, smart coaching. I mean, Josh Allen, you just watch him play, and I get he's probably the best quarterback in the league. First or second best quarterback in the league.
Him and
The
Mahomes are like head and shoulders above
Yeah,
everybody
it's
else. Yeah.
definitely those two above everyone else. But you watch the confidence and the swagger of Josh Allen, and you have zero doubt in your mind that he's going to make the right play almost every single time. And you watch Kirk Cousins, granted it's loud, but he's covering his ear holes so he can hear the play, and like you can tell he's struggling, and he's trying to yell it to the guys in the huddle, and it's always chaos, and it's like the chaos can never be calmed down by Kirk to the point where the team can just settle in and be okay. And I know it's little things, and I know like statistically Kirk puts up good numbers, and he's really stabilized the quarterback position for us over the last 5 years. Where before that we had no stabilization going all the way back to Dante Culpepper, really. So I mean, I'm thankful that he's available and he's always he's never hurt or anything like that. But it's just like at some point, good isn't good enough when you're not winning playoff games, when you're not, moving forward whatsoever. And I guess, for some fans, it's fine if we make the playoffs but end up losing in the first round, and then they consider that a successful season. But you and I, we've been watching long enough. We see all these other teams. Like, how does Philadelphia they beat us in 2017 in the NFC Championship game. Since then, they took a complete nosedive. They had a falling out between their starting quarterback and head coach. They lost their backup quarterback that they won the Super Bowl with. They completely go in the tank, and here they are. They drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round, and bam, they're right back ahead of us again, all within a 5-year stretch. And the Vikings have just been sitting around 500 doing nothing. You can say that for a multitude of teams. Across the league that have in that same time gone down and come back up, and the Vikings are just sitting in the same spot they were since 2018.
Yeah, we're just maintaining status quo. And even then, like this Eagles team, well, they've been in this rebuild process back in 2018. They made the playoffs over us. When we first brought in Kirk, we had this big season we were looking forward to and just fell flat. And then
Yep.
2019, we make the playoffs, won a playoff game. Great. And then you get last year, even Eagles, again, they got the playoffs before us, even though they're like in a rebuilding year where we were not. We were trying to run it back and run what back exactly now when you look back on it. So
Yeah.
I lots of frustration to be had there, just because like we're like you said, it's all about being more than good. Like good just isn't good enough. Like
Yes.
we want to begin some deep playoff runs here more consistent than we are, because it feels like we have a nice NFC Championship run like about every 10 years. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we need better than that, considering the success of this franchise over. I mean, since its existence, we've been like the sixth best team or whatever is in terms of winning percentage. So like, man, yeah, just you'd like to see more, yeah, more than 8, 9 wins a season.
Yeah, and Another thing I thought was disappointing last night was just the lack of pass rush. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that the Eagles have maybe the best offensive line in football, but I mean, just nothing out of Daniil and Za'Darius. I think they might have like had a half sack each. I
Mhm.
know there was a play where Daniil got there first and then Za'Darius finished him off, but other than that, there was nothing. Like I already mentioned, the defensive tackles did not play well, stopping the run. I thought Kendricks didn't have a very good game. So it's just, I mean, it was a disaster all the way around. And whether it was scheme related, I don't know. But um, I thought they took a good step forward this offseason in terms of kind of trying to rebuild this defense, at least the depth portion of it. Lewis Seen, he didn't really get in much at safety, but he played a little bit. Andrew Booth has been out with an injury. I saw Caleb Evans got quite a few snaps at corner last night. Asamoah is already a good special teamer. They got Ed Ingram, starting at right guard. I thought he did okay. I mean, offensive line wasn't amazing last night, but it also didn't it
It
wasn't like
didn't
a
jump off the page or something, like
right. It
with bad
wasn't
play.
exactly. It wasn't like when we play the Bears and Kirk Cousins just getting destroyed every single play.
Mhm.
Um, so I thought, I think this draft class from this previous draft is going to turn out to be okay and a good step in the right direction. But as we look towards next year, I think it's extremely, extremely important um, to focus that first round pick on finding a quarterback of the future. Because after this season, you have Kirk under contract for one more year. He'll be at, I think, 35, 36 when his contract ends. I mean, there will be no better time to make a transition at quarterback, and it could get worse. It certainly could get worse from Kirk Cousins. It could also get better, and at some point, you need to be willing to take that risk because as long as you have Kirk Cousins, I think we all know what we can kind of expect.
Yeah, agreed. And I think moving off Kirk this year, there certainly was not a comparable option to go to. Like I don't think that was realistic either in the draft or free agency or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was possible. So like Kirk was probably the best option we had this year. But again, maybe you don't necessarily need the best option. Maybe you do it on purpose, where you just
Mm-hmm.
end up with a bad quarterback. So you have a bad season, then you set yourself up for a great draft pick in next spring to take a quarterback. So you don't have to trade assets to move drastically high in the draft. So I think that's certainly should be taken into consideration. And when you move off Kirk to a worse QB, you're also freeing up a lot of cap space to bolster the rest of your roster to look better. So it's
Yes.
just a different way to win 8, 9, 10 games probably in an ideal world. So really, I mean, what's the difference?
I don't want to, get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's kind of fun to think about that stuff even further down the line because no matter how this season ends, like, do I really believe the Vikings are winning the Super Bowl this year? Probably not. So, um, it's interesting. But do you have any other final thoughts on this game before we look ahead to Week 3 with Detroit?
Yeah, I think this is a good slice of humble pie to bring everybody back down to earth. I know everybody was very high, myself included, after that big win against the Packers at home. That was awesome. Kind of felt like you saw a peak version of this Vikings team, and then now you feel like you've seen a really bottom version, like the worst you can think of for this team. So now you feel like you're probably somewhere in the middle, which inevitably feels like a 500
Right.
team, maybe a little bit
Yep.
above that. So yeah, it's. I think it was just probably in a way good. Now we could see what this team looks like responding to adversity and how they bounce back next week or really in the next 4 games to come before that bye week. I'm kind of curious where we'll be sitting at the bye. Ideally, you're probably 4-2, but I just feel like we'll probably find our way to like 3-3 or something.
Yeah, because that Dolphins game all of a sudden looks a lot tougher the week before the
Yes.
bye. And then I'm not super confident in this Lions game, and I'm not super confident going to London and having to play the Saints, even though the Saints really haven't looked very good. Um, it's just it's one of those weird neutral site games. Kirk's not in his element. It'll be interesting. But I
Yeah.
guess my final thought is Mike Zimmer was definitely at his ranch just enjoying himself last night.
Oh, had
I
to have
mean,
been.
we're better off without him. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think O'Connell's going to be a fantastic head coach, but I think we're starting to find Mike Zimmer was right about a lot of the stuff he said. And even though he might have been, a little rude in the way he said some things, or, he wasn't exactly, the nicest guy talking to the media, stuff like that. I mean, when it comes to like Kirk Cousins, when it comes to the depth of this team, Kellen Mond, obviously he was right about. So it's like, I mean, Zimmer wasn't crazy. Zimmer still knows football, but at the same time, in terms of being a leader, I'm still very happy we have Kevin O'Connell, and I trust that he can move this team forward, hopefully in the right direction this year. But in the years to come. So
I totally agree. Yeah, it's definitely rough in the delivery. I know Zimmer a little rough around the edges, but yeah, kind of finding a lot of things that he had to say or how he evaluated this team to be true.
yeah, absolutely. So that will do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, please click the like button on this video and feel free to subscribe to our channel and help spread the word about our Minnesota sports conversations. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of last night's game? Do you think the Vikings got exposed? Do you think they're going to be just fine? Any other thoughts you might have from the game, let us know below. And until next time, thanks for watching.